Hey everybody, I'm Logan Camden.
I'm Carson Breber.
I'm Spencer Chiak.
And this is Nerd Sesh.
No! Oh my God, how could he do that?
Are you on What?
Charles Darwin.
We are going to bring on sports journalism students here at Arizona State to talk with us about their sports experiences, and I'm very happy to announce that our first guest here today is my good friend, Cole Bradley. Cole, how's it going?
Good, guys. Thank you for having me.
All right, Cole. So the first question we have is, what's your favorite sport?
Definitely baseball. I grew up with baseball pretty much my entire life and played it my entire life. I've always had a passion for it. I've been a big Diamondbacks fan my entire life, and it's been the game that I followed the most. So definitely baseball.
Glad we brought on a smart first guest. What's your favorite team? What was the team growing up?
Like I said, the Diamondbacks, but I will have to say a close second for me personally would have to be the Rockies because I grew up in Colorado, and being around Colorado and baseball culture down there wasn't as big as it is down here or as good. The Rockies are sure as shine not the Diamondbacks, especially this year. But growing up watching their games and going to their games, I'd have to say the Rockies have also played a big part in my baseball fandom as well.
Let me ask you, Cole, who is your favorite sports player? Don't limit yourself to baseball. If you have another, who's your favorite athlete, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, my favorite athlete by far would have to be Larry Fitzgerald, Cardinals wide receiver. If we're going to talk about athlete, the guy can ball out. He's an extremely good wide receiver. For those who don't know, he's broke and set new records receiving-wise in the NFL. But I also really appreciate the kind of guy he is off the field, the things he does in the community, overseas, for the troops, for the kids, supplying hearing aids to kids in Uganda. I really, that inspires me. I think that's a really enviable thing in today's world, especially considering how big of a part guys like that play in our society and our communities. So definitely Larry Fitzgerald for me.
Yeah, just to speak to a little personal anecdote I have about the kind of guy that Larry Fitzgerald is. Obviously, I don't know him very well, but I did get a chance to interact with him once. He came out and spoke to an entire camp that I was a part of and was a super nice guy. Took the time out with us after a training camp and just really hung out with us, answered all our questions, and was really cool. So Larry obviously has had some incredible moments in his NFL career. Cole, we ask you, what's your favorite sports moment of your life thus far?
Favorite sports moment is a really tough one for me. There's been a lot. Specifically, if we're talking about my team, I have to go with when we made it to the Super Bowl against Logan Steelers. Unfortunately, we lost that game, and I was probably too young to really even care about football back then. But just the fact, or just to say that your team has gone to a major championship and played in it after an incredible years is pretty awesome. I will say one of the best things that I've ever witnessed sports-wise would have to be the 2017 wild card game between the Diamondbacks and the Rockies. Like I said, I'm a Diamondbacks fan, but I also said that I grew up with the Rockies. So having those two teams, essentially my two favorite teams, playing each other in the same game, and as crazy as that game ended up turning out, that is definitely a big-time favorite sports moment of mine for sure. So I'd say that's a close second. There's plenty that I could mention, but those are the two that come to mind at least right now.
And for being real, I can't think of a better guy who didn't win a Super Bowl. Larry's an awesome guy, awesome character, performed really well in the 2009 playoffs. And I'm not mad the Steelers won, of course, but Larry's a great guy, and I really did want to see Kurt Warner and Larry do something special in Arizona. I have to say that they did.
And, of course, one of the really special moments of Larry's career, he had that long touchdown against the Packers in that playoff game that was pretty magical and very memorable.
Having lived here and having personally seen this day in and day out from Larry, too, I have to say, is really something incredible to see. Now, Cole, we like talking about sports subjects here. What do you want to talk about? What's something that's really bugging your mind?
Yeah, so there's a couple things recently, but I think the biggest thing I would like to get into as the NFL season is officially upon us is my Arizona Cardinals. I'm pretty intrigued by this year after they drafted Kyler Murray with the first overall pick. Me personally, I'm very curious to see how this turns out after we traded up last year to get Josh Rosen with the 10th pick and then decided to only give him 1 year to succeed, which he didn't, which I think is got to be the offensive line's fault. And instead we said, okay, instead of really bolstering our defensive line and going with Bosa at number 1 overall, we'll take Kyler and get a playmaking QB who can spread the field and be athletic out of the pocket and who can make plays all over the field. I'm just intrigued to see how it turns out. Part of me agrees that, or part of me thinks that it was a bad pick to go Kyler number 1. I hope he does well. I hope he succeeds. But I guess my whole thing is I'm really intrigued to see how the Cardinals do this year, especially with a new head coach, a new offensive system, and a new quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this team is already being tailored towards Kyler Murray. The fact that they brought in Cliff Kingsbury, who is really just an offensive guru to run this squad, who does not have much successful head coaching experience. Obviously, he was at Texas Tech, where they don't win too many games, but they sure put up a lot of points. I think this offense is going to be interesting to watch this year. Obviously, they were pretty abysmal last year. They were last in yards and points, but they bring in Charles Clay, who's previously been with my Buffalo Bills, who is a pretty solid, dependable offensive option. Maybe you can unleash David Johnson in this offense, especially in the passing game, which is what I think Kingsbury might help out with. Give Kyler Murray a reliable safety valve and an extraordinary playmaker. And then the receiving core is going to be interesting. We'll see if Christian Kirk can break through. I'm a little skeptical, but you have the dependable Larry Fitzgerald, brought in Michael Crabtree. So it's going to be an interesting offensive unit. I'm not sold, but there's a lot of ways this season could go on that side of the ball.
I have to agree. I think there's a lot of intriguing weapons on this team. I was a huge fan of the Andy Isabella pick. I really wanted the Steelers to pick him up later, but I think Andy Isabella is going to be a fun guy to watch with all that speed. Hakeem Butler out of Iowa State is going to be intriguing with Michael Crabtree. And, of course, the incomparable Larry Fitzgerald. He will be a rock for Kyler Murray when he gets in trouble. I wish the Cardinals had bolstered that offensive line a little more. I can't think of any offensive line moves they made other than trading for the Steelers' injury-prone tackle Marcus Gilbert. The wide receiver weapons are there for Kyler, and a best-case scenario for Kyler, in my opinion, is he emulates Russell Wilson or Baker Mayfield enough to justify being the number 1 overall pick. Like Cole briefly said, the Josh Rosen trade I was not a fan of. I like Josh Rosen out of college. I would have given him a little more leash, a little more run time there in Arizona, but that's their decision, and we'll just have to see what Kyler Murray does.
I personally am a little surprised nobody yet has brought up Christian Kirk. His season was cut short last year, and he was having a very strong rookie campaign. I also think that David Johnson's actually going to make a strong comeback. He's had to deal with injury the past couple of years. Then last year with the old head coaching regime, what happened was they kept forcing him to go up the middle instead of using the outside, and he's a much stronger out of the zone running back than going through, especially with that weak O-line. The last point about the Cardinals that I'm most intrigued by is they're going to cut their transition time. They want 15 seconds. The average time right now in the NFL is 30. They're trying to cut that down to 15. And while I think that there's going to be some great scoring opportunities, especially in those first few weeks, getting to week 15, week 16, I know that they're probably not going to be headed towards the playoffs, but that is going to be one tired offense if they do work at that speed.
Yeah, I agree with all your guys' points. I think when it comes to the Cardinals, like Logan was saying, I was not a big fan of the Rosen trade. I would have liked to see or to have seen Rosen get at least 2 years to operate under that offense and really have at least a somewhat respectable offensive line to play behind. The fact of the matter is, last year the Cardinals couldn't really make any plays because they couldn't give their quarterback any time to get rid of the football. And it was the same for the running game. They didn't give David Johnson enough time to really get out of the backfield and make plays in the open field, which he is very capable of doing. I think this year with the new offensive system under Kingsbury, it'll be really interesting to see how they open up the field. I'm hoping we go back to the days where we had Bruce Arians running that offense, or helping guys like a guy like Carson Palmer really spread the field and be successful on offense. But like Spencer was saying, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs this year. I don't have that high of expectations. I'm hoping they show something this year that tells me that they will be able to make a run in the future. But that's why I'm so intrigued about this year, is because we won't know until the season's over. And I hope Kyler does well. I hope my Cardinals do well. But it's going to be really interesting to see how this year overall turns out, strictly for the offense, the defense as well, but I'm really, really intrigued to see how that offense does.
Yeah, and just to talk about the defense a little bit, obviously the star of the defense is Chandler Jones, one of the best pass rushers in the league. There is talent on this defense. You know, the linebacking core is decent. They've got obviously veteran Terrell Suggs. They've got Hassan Reddick, who was a high draft pick out of Temple a couple years ago. And they've got Jordan Hicks, who was a pretty reliable middle linebacker for the Eagles. But I don't know, the front line besides Chandler Jones is a little bit suspect in my opinion. The secondary, we'll see if Budda Baker can make a jump, then he could sort of be the anchor of that as the ball hawk that he was in college. But I'm not sure about the defense. I think that they're probably going to be mediocre, frankly, and I think the offense might be in that same range, which makes it tough to win games consistently in the league.
They acquired Terrell Suggs as well. I think Terrell Suggs is going to be able to coach up some of these young guys on defense. The defense doesn't blow me away, though. The final thing I want to talk about, though, is record. How do we think the Cardinals are going to finish up? I'll go first. I think the Cardinals are looking at a 4-12 record. Not at best, but that's what I'm going with.
I'm going to put them at 6-10. I think that there is enough, especially towards the beginning. Expect some surprises. I think Kingsbury's really going to get creative with his guys. I'll put him at 6-10.
I'm going to go with 4-12 like Logan. I think there's a lot that this unit is going to have to figure out. Offensively, it's going to be weird. Kingsbury making the transition into the NFL. Kyler Murray having to deal with that offensive line. I think it's going to be tough to win games, but that's okay because the objective isn't to go out there and be great this season. It's long-term and turning Kyler Murray into that franchise guy.
I'm going to take the middle. I think they're going to go 5-11 this year. I think I honestly feel like they're not going to win as much as I would like them to, obviously, but they're not going to win 3 games like they did last year. The offense is going to be at least a little bit better with Murray. Obviously, that entire division is super tough this year, especially with the Niners getting Jimmy Garoppolo back. Say what you will about the guy. They didn't have the most ideal situation at quarterback last year. Getting him back is really going to help him out. So that division remains competitive. So in-division games are going to be pretty hard for the Cardinals, whether they're on the road or they're at home. I don't think they're really going to do well in the division, but I feel like they'll at least be able to win 5 games.
Thanks, Cole, for joining us. It was great talking to you. Always a great time to talk about the Cardinals, I got to say.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's been great.
I have been Logan Camden.
I've been Carson Breber.
And I was Spencer Chioc.
This has been Nerd Sesh. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at NerdSesh, NERDSESH, and on Twitter at @nerd_sesh.